Maybe you're planning on lowering your Leon and maybe you've bought springs for it, or springs and shocks, and it can be a pig of a job on these cars and you want to make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. Well, in this video I'm going to show you the preparation I've done on my car before I then fit my full suspension kit to it. How's it going? I'm Kevin, this is North Cove Workshop, where you'll find content on car modification and DIY. Today's video was a kind of off the cuff kind of video made because I'm now preparing the car for putting a full suspension kit on. I've got Eibach springs and Bilstein shock absorbers to go on, and I want to make sure the whole process went fairly smoothly. There is 12 years of rust built up on the suspension on that car, and I wanted to make sure that I hit it with wire brushes and penetrating fluid to make sure that everything came out fairly easily without breaking bolts or shearing off nuts. I did ask the question on Instagram about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, saying should I do it myself or should I take it to a garage? It was 50-50. So a lot of people saying that if you've got right tools it should be straightforward, and a lot of people saying it's a horrible job, don't even try it, put it to a garage and let them have the headache. But for the content, for YouTube, I'm doing it myself. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is show you the process I've done already outside on the drive because it was getting quite dark now, it's the evening time. So I filmed it before it got too dark, came inside to do the intro, but I'm going to talk you through the process of what I was doing, why I was doing it, and then that'll hopefully help you if you're planning on lowering your car at some point. Then you can do the same process beforehand to prepare the car, make sure it's all ready to come apart when you want to fit the suspension kit. So let's get started. So for this job what I've got is I've got a can of copper grease, I've also got a can of penetrating fluid, then I've got a battery drill with various wire brush attachments to go on it. I've also got a large handheld wire brush and then a smaller plastic handled wire brush as well. Then I have a drill driver as well with an extension and a T30 Torx bit on the end of it. So first of all, before we actually jack the car up, what we'll do is pop the bonnet and remove this panel from the back of the engine bay. You've just got the 2 screws either side which you take out, then remove the rubber seal and then lift this panel out the back. This now gives you clear access to the top of the struts on both sides, and then I'm just going to take a wire brush to the top of each of the bolts just in case to try and take any excess rust or corrosion off them. Then a couple of sprays of penetrating fluid on each of the bolt heads. Now time to jack the car up, so remove my annoying chrome caps off my wheel nuts, undo them as normal, and jack the car up and make sure you safely secure it on axle stands. And if you're doing it on the driveway or on the garage floor, make sure you use cardboard under your working area to keep it nice and clean. So first up what we're going to tackle is the 3 nuts on the bottom of the ball joint. Giving them a good going over with the wire brush and then just spraying penetrating fluid on afterwards. Next up we're tackling the lower end of the anti-roll bar link, and we're using the battery drill as well to help take off as much corrosion as possible. Now we're tackling the lower end of the strut itself, so we're wanting to clean up the threads on the end of the bolt that clamps the strut in place. And while I'm here, I'm just doing the edge of the hub where the strut meets it. Then I just turn the steering wheel to give a better angle on the other side of the strut. And I'm looking to remove the anti-roll bar wire out of the way so I can get better access to the strut itself. Now to tackle the top end of the anti-roll bar link, again just cleaning up the threads and the nut itself. And clean up the head of the bolt that holds the strut in place. Now this is the trickiest part now, is cleaning up the threads of the 3 bolts that are sticking through on the top of the strut mount. Now there's not much space in here at all, so getting a small wire brush in here is probably the best idea. And once cleaned up, just apply as much penetrating fluid on the end of the threads as possible. Now this bit can be optional, but what I'm doing here is I'm just loosening the bolts of the strut tops. Now I'm working them backwards and forwards gradually, I'm not just loosening in one go, and this just hopefully means they'll come out a lot easier when it comes to changing the suspension over. So right at the end here what we do is we cover all the places we've cleaned up with copper grease, and this just stops corrosion setting in before we get back to changing the suspension over. Now moving on to the rear suspension, what we start off with is the 2 bolts holding on the strut top. Then we've got the head of the bolt on the lower control arm. And I'm hammering on a socket here as well to try and free up as much corrosion as possible. Now onto the bolt that holds on the bottom of the strut to the hub, and again just trying to get as much corrosion off as possible and a good coating of penetrating fluid. Then finally cleaning up the threaded end of the bolt in the lower control arm on the other side. And same as the front, just cover all these joints in copper grease afterwards. So that's the car now back on all of its wheels again, on the drive, and everything back together again, and hopefully it all comes apart, no bother when it comes time to fit the new suspension kit. So when that video is done for the suspension kit, I'll put it up here in the corner. I'll pop another video there to fill the gap until then. Don't forget, as always, to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Hit subscribe down below to catch those future suspension videos or any other videos in future from the channel, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers!